Yes, the floor is yours, Aya.
Thank you. Grattis, Sverige. Congratulations, Sweden. Today you celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Swedish Freedom of the Press Act. It is indeed a special feeling standing here as a representative of Denmark, the absolute forerunner in Scandinavia when it comes to defending free speech, admitting that Sweden was first. In Denmark, free speech was introduced as part of our constitution in 1849. So you beat us by 83 years.
And in football.
Sweden was the first Scandinavian country to pass a law on free speech. But alas, it seems as if you'll also be the first Scandinavian country to abolish free speech. Formally speaking, free speech is alive and kicking in Sweden. But in fact, there is something rotten in the state of Sweden. Far more rotten than in Denmark.
That's nice.
Compared to the other Scandinavian countries, Denmark is famous and infamous for its strong and open debates, for our Mohammed cartoons that wrote international history in regards to free speech. Could you possibly imagine the Mohammed cartoons being published in a Swedish newspaper? Probably not. It would be unthinkable here in Sweden. Where would you find an editor and a newspaper that would print them? And where would you find a Swedish editor and a newspaper with sufficient courage to host a free and open debate on Islam and mass migration? Likewise, in Denmark, it would be just as unthinkable to find an artist in prison and his work seized because they might offend someone. The appalling case against Dan Park could not have taken place in Denmark. Why is there such a big difference between our two countries when it comes to free speech? In so many other aspects, we are very much alike. I dare to suggest one possible explanation to this complex question. In Denmark, we have succeeded in giving rise to some outstanding defenders of the right to have a free and open debate by speaking their minds. We have had the good fortune of having a number of intellectuals who have set a personal example and who have had the courage to take free speech to the limit. Some of them have been sentenced both fines and imprisonment, but that didn't hold them back. They have created an area of freedom in the public debate. This area of freedom has made free speech thrive in Denmark and made Danes accept that a harsh debate is part of living in a free and open democracy. It has brought a certain robustness to the Danish notion of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not something that is handed to you from above. It is something you have to fight for. And this distinction is probably the most fundamental difference between our two countries. Today, the majority in Denmark believe that Jyllands-Posten had every right to publish the 12 Mohammed cartoons back in 2005. And there is a growing understanding that Flemming Rose was right when he said that living in a free and open democracy means that you have to put up with the risk of being scorned and ridiculed. Still, there is something rotten in the state of Denmark. The truth is that Denmark is constantly a hair's breadth from becoming another Sweden. And let me give you a few examples. When in 2014 the Free Press Society was preparing a Dan Park exhibition, unknown perpetrators broke the windows of the gallery that was hosting the exhibition. As a result, the owner of the gallery cancelled the exhibition. He was afraid. He was so afraid that he chose security over freedom of speech. And of course, we must not forget the Mohammed cartoons. We are proud of being the homeland of the Mohammed cartoons, but the newspaper that first published them is not. On the contrary, the new editor-in-chief has just put an arm's length to the cartoons, stressing that Jyllands-Posten will never again publish the Mohammed cartoons. Furthermore, Jyllands-Posten will reduce their writing on Islam. It goes without saying that the newspaper has given in to fear. In Denmark, fear rules, self-censorship grows, and so does the number of persons who live under constant police protection. Hopefully, we will not run out of courageous and strong-willed people who will stand up for the right to freedom of speech. And today we can find comfort in the fact that Sweden is gradually becoming more Danish. The Free Press Society sees this event as a promising proof that Swedes understand that they themselves have to seize the right to freedom of speech, because nobody else can do it for them. The Free Press Society is not used to attending free speech conferences in Stockholm. They usually take place in Copenhagen. This is a very, very good sign. I'm happy to be here, and the Free Press Society wishes to thank Sjunnesson for this most important pioneering work of making this conference possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Aya. I'm very honored.
It was a bit of Swedish bashing.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually a member of the Danish Free Speech Society, as you know.
Free Press Society, yeah.
I thought it was Free Speech. No. Free Press, sorry. Trykkefrihedsselskabet. And I've been visiting Copenhagen a few times, also as Daniel Pipes did, in the Danish Parliament, because the Danish Free Press Society has friends in Parliament, which gives them the right to use the parliamentary building for purposes. One of the parties in the Danish Parliament, Danish Folkbildning, is very, aligned or have good connections with the Danish Free Press Society. So that when I've been there, it's been a normal meeting in parliamentary buildings with the Danish Free Press Society. So I will hope that will happen in Sweden too, but not before the election 2018, which will change the country very much, I think. What I want to say is that there are signs both of going to the negative, but also to the positive side. As I said before, in the 18th century, to suppress a publication led to the legislation, Freedom of the Press Act. The suppression of not letting Mona Walter speak in Rinkeby Folkets Hus led her to be in the national Swedish television a few weeks or months later. So by suppressing something, you give more attention, and then by some happenstance, sometimes it goes in the right direction. I would say that last week when I was in Gothenburg, the Gothenburg Book Fair, I was in a bookstall of a newspaper and a publishing house that was considered right-wing, extreme racist, all the name-calling we get. And I used to write there, and I will write there maybe again, and a few of the colleagues here are employed by them. But we were there, and we were actually given space at this book fair. Now, just give you an introduction to the situation which Ian described. First, this controversial newspaper and publishing house was considered to be a part of the freedom of speech. So they defended from the book fair's management board that yes, they can be here because, lo and behold, the theme of the book fair was Freedom of the Speech Act from 1766, and we uphold that. So they defended the right. Yes, it's a controversial publication, and controversial books are being published there. They might be right-wing, extreme, but we defend them. Then Swedish writers and intellectuals said, how can you allow these publications to be there and be present at the book fair? And some of these writers said that then we won't come, and then the publishing houses said that we won't come. So there was a bashing towards the book fair's management. And then they retracted and said, no, okay, we understand this is against good manners, or against, they couldn't say against freedom of speech, but they said it was against the idea of human dignity for all, I would say. They refer to UN declaration that they don't understand. So they actually said, first they say yes, then they said no, and lo and behold, in the end, they had to say yes, because otherwise they would be drawn into court. See you in court, said the editor-in-chief, Abdel-Samad, and I heard the amount of 4 million Swedish crowns being fined to the book fair if they didn't uphold the original agreement, which was done in, I think, during the spring of this year. So, yes, no, yes. So I was there for 4 days. A few of my colleagues here were there too, and we had nice interactions. People were very, very interested to hear what are these racist publications and where is this racist newspaper, and we gave them to them and said there's no racist here. There was also a recipe of bread baking that I used to show them to with raspberry and rhubarbs. I don't know, very fascist. And after 4 days, I would say it was a success, because in every debate on that book fair they talk about the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, and whether that let's say us, that should be there or should not be there. I was also on a debate where the Swedish Pen Society was present, Mr. Ola Larsmo, and some other people, and all these big shot intellectuals. This Danish Pen was the one that didn't allow Lars Hedegaard to be a member in 2003. That's why he created the Danish Free Press Society. You see, action gets reaction already by then. So in this debate Sunday morning, Ola Larsmo and Åsa Lindeborg and everyone was there. Also Daniel Pohl from Expo. Jonathan Lehmann from Expo was there. Why he was there, he's not a publisher, I don't know. But they talked about us, but we were not present. There were 6 big shot intellectuals talking about whether we should be present at the book fair or not, but we were not allowed even to be on stage. Then we got into national television. The rest is known to the Swedes as something you do with children when you play in the little sandbox. But the decision from the book fair board was that, and listen carefully, either we allow everyone to come next year, 2017, and the theme for next year is going to be Finland. So there's not much about freedom of speech there, so they got safe on that side. So either they allow everyone to come, or they would actually pick out the ones that are not decided to be there. But as I walked around the book fair this year, I saw some dubious books and dubious book publishing houses and newspapers. One was called October Förlaget, which used to be SKP, the Swedish Marxist-Leninist Maoist Party's publishing house, October Förlaget. They defended and also defend now Mao Zedong's policy. They gave out books there. There was also Mr. Jan Myrdal, the son of Alva and Gunnar Myrdal. You might know Alva and Gunnar. Jan Myrdal was sitting in Sjunnesson-Sällskapets monter. It was very fun. Jan Myrdal and Jan Myrdal-Sällskap, he was sitting there. He's a fierce Maoist, Marxist-Leninist, and he was sitting there. You can chat with Jan Myrdal. And then there was something called the Lenin Spa. There is a rich hotel owner in south of Sweden who is he's a Leninist, Marxist-Leninist, and he's rich. So you go to his, it's called Hotel Havana in south of Sweden. And a part of his hotel has a spa, and they call it the Lenin Spa. And the pictures of Lenin there, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. They were there with his Lenin Spa brochures. You can check in, it's very nice. And a few years earlier, he had something called the Lenin's Children's Quarter, Lenin's Barnhörna. And to end, there was a seminar that I didn't attend. I wanted to, but something held me back. He said, wasn't there anything good about the East Germany, DDR? Wasn't there anything good about the East Germany, the communist-dominated dictatorship from, I think, 1948 to 1989? So we should go there and discuss whether, people were well treated there or not. I checked out the figures, and the civilians that died for political reasons in East Germany from 48 to 89 was 100,000. So we should go there and discuss, symphonies were nice. Bach was born in Leipzig. That's nothing the communists could do much about. And they maybe had some good art, I don't know. But it's just appalling. I mean, was it anything good about the Third Reich? Imagine that seminar title. You go there and discuss Volkswagen and highways in Germany. My father used to talk about that, and they did good highways. My father was a road constructor. He liked them, the roads. But I mean, so if the book fair decides next year that we're going to pick out the ones that we don't like, they're going to have a huge problem. And it's not just the communists, but also the sort of fellow travels, Arena-gruppen, Phronesis, Atlas Bokförlag. I know they are socialist and they're sort of leaning in this and that direction, but there's a huge range of far left magazines and publications that might not be present. So they have an idea about the freedom of speech and freedom of the press that they have to decide. Either everyone, including us, and maybe some people who speak here today will be invited next year if they decide on that decision. Jan Tullberg maybe speak, and Daniel Pipes, and maybe I can speak their debate about this. Or it's going to become a smaller book fair. The thing about the book fair is an institution since 1985 that wants to be like the German, I think it's in Frankfurt, isn't it? The Frankfurt Book Fair. So they want to be smaller, but everyone can be here and you can listen to. And it's some of those stalls, book stalls, are really crazy, really, really crazy. People sell books not just about conspiracy theories, but about UFOs and and just imagine anything that's in your fantasy. So I would say it is a place for extremism in all its areas. Also about bodies, what you can do, and but also politically. And since this, what they call a right-wing institution, came there with the newspaper Nya Tider and the books, they thought that was the limit. And then they got all into troubles, and then they allowed us to be there. So the freedom of, I would say that the freedom of the press and freedom of speech in Sweden, by this last week's news around this, because everyone is discussing this. In Sweden there's something called värdegrund, which is horrible in Danish and Swedish. In all languages it's called basic values. And then they always say, well, everyone's the same worth, the human dignity, and all sorts of things that sound very nice, but they actually mean sort of a leftist conception of what they mean. So either they have basic values that should be allowed in schools, which they are. If you agree to the basic values, you can be a teacher, for instance. So the book fair are either considering basic values, and then they have to find whether the communists or us agree on that, or if that can be allowed anyway.
But Jan, the primary basic value must be freedom of speech, because without freedom of speech, there's nothing else.
To hear Ola Larsmo, the president of the Swedish PEN, and when they asked him which they did well from the stage, well, Ola Larsmo, what do you think should be the credentials to be allowed next year? He said, värdegrund, basic values. And he's the head of the Swedish PEN Society. Mm. So that's where we are. But I would say that the last week we have moved a bit. Not to
baby
Denmark.
steps, yes.
I thought the presence of that paper and all the debate around created that this is foolish. How can you allow Marxist-Leninists to be there and not people who are not even racist? They just write about immigration and Islam. Mm. What we've been talking about here is mainstream. It's mainstream now. I mean, anyone can see after the terror attacks in Denmark and around Europe that Islam is not a religion of peace. Mm-hmm. But I like Denmark.
So do I.
Do we have vi några spørgsmål? Do we have any questions? Yeah. Mm. Me and I are not agreeing upon Norway, and there was no one from Norway to be present. I think Denmark.
But we have Hanne Tolke.
Yeah, I think Denmark is number one, freedom of speech and press, then Norway, and then Sweden. But then I said no, it's Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, and I find Norway slightly more open. You have Hege Storhag, you have document.no, You have, but then unfortunately we have to mention Mr. Behring Breivik, and everything he did has given as I understand in the Norwegian debate, anything that touches about this, you implied to have been somehow connected to Mr. Breivik.
Norway is the best one. Some few weeks ago, I went there together with Lars Hedegaard. It was the Stop Islamization of Norway who had a conference, and it was held in the middle of the town, in a big bookstore, in a big conference room. There were no police, and it had been advertised on Facebook, on YouTube, in the newspapers 1 month ahead. Even my picture was there. And Lars Hedegaard, of course, he's well more known in that business than me. Not one protester. And you know how it is here. He's down the basement, and in Sweden we can't do anything. And in Denmark there's hundreds of police running around.
But we're comedians.
Norway wins.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Aya. And no, we have no time for more questions. Okay, but yeah. Iceland. Iceland had 5 immigrants in 1965. Then they had 7 in 64. Iceland, there's a tiny multicultural elite in Iceland trying to import the Swedish multicultural attitude, and doesn't work very well. They're nationalists. No, you wouldn't rock them. You see, the Finns and the Icelanders, they are the sturdy Nordic bastions. Whereas Sweden is like, Norway and Denmark are, better, but Iceland, no, that won't happen. No. Okay, thank you, Aya, and thank you, Danish Free Speech Society.